We have boomer bust players plus an injury to Sonny Gray. We'll talk about it next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5, a podcast that gets you caught up fast on the fantasy news and advice that you need to know. Follow and stream us on Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are found. Today is Monday, March 15th. I am Frank Sample, joined by Scott White. And let's start with boomer bust player number 1, Trevor Bauer. Just look at his ERA the last 4 seasons: 1.73, 4.48, 2.21, and 4.19. More likely to happen, Scott, boom or bust for Bauer?
I think the boom is more likely to happen. I have him as my 4th ranked starting pitcher. I think that's about as high as anybody can justify having him, given the big 3 at that position. But I understand why we'd call him a boomer bust pick, just looking at the last 2 seasons, 1.73 ERA versus 4.48. But even in that bad season, 253 strikeouts, 125 whip, not so bad, double-digit wins. That's almost certain to happen as many innings as he pitches and pitching for the Dodgers. And the ERA itself wasn't that bad before he got traded to Cincinnati. 2 of the last 3 years, I would argue Trevor Bauer's been the best pitcher in his league. Obviously didn't win the Cy Young in 2018, but I think he was the front runner before he broke his leg in August and had obviously great numbers that year. So I'm fine with Bauer as my 4th starting pitcher early in the 2nd round, maybe even late in the 1st if it's a head-to-head points league.
How about Dylan Moore? Kind of a journeyman, came onto the scene last year, and he was awesome. Finished as the 91st overall player in Roto, 3.4 fantasy points per game among second basemen. That was second best at the position. So, Scott, how are you feeling about Dylan Moore this upcoming season?
I've started to feel better because his primary competition at second base, Shed Long, he doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the start of the season, having some leg issues that aren't going away. And there's some talk of Dylan Moore batting leadoff. So I actually feel like his job is pretty secure at this point, whether he'll produce like he did last year, given that he was kind of this minor league journeyman, late 20s, coming out of nowhere. I have my doubts there still, but if we know he can run, and obviously that's very valuable in Roto leagues. And if we trust the playing time is there too, how he produces at the plate is kind of a moot point at that point, right? But it looks like he has some power. It looks like he gets on base a decent amount. And I think I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility he could just follow through on what he showed in 2020.
Again, that is Dylan Moore with the Seattle Mariners. He has an ADP of 156.2 according to Fantasy Pros. Let's hit our final boomer bust player here. And Patrick Corbin, who has been a mainstay on fantasy rosters the past couple of years, in 2020, not his best. 4.66 ERA with a 1.57 whip. And part of the issue for him last year was the velocity being down. And so far, it seems like that has been the case so far in spring training. Scott, where are you at on Patrick Corbin? Boom or bust this season?
So I'm leaning bust on Patrick Corbin. I really just need to see the velocity get back to where it was 2 years ago, more like 92 on the fastball than 90, as we've seen this spring. One of the Nationals beat writers did point out that the velocity is up for Corbin from where it was at this time last spring. And that's a worthy thing to note because, we've seen throughout spring training, certain pitchers, we've seen their velocity increase. Sometimes you see a pitcher not throw his normal velocity until the regular season itself begins. But just given how hard Corbin fell last year, and to me, it's, it certainly corresponds to the drop in velocity. I need to see the velocity get all the way there before I'm ready to trust him again. And, 90 is not what you want to see him throwing.
Scott, let's quickly hit on Sonny Gray, who was scratched from his spring training start on Sunday due to a mid-back injury. He also went on the IL with the same injury last September. How far are we dropping Sonny Gray in the rankings?
So I'm dropping him outside of my top 35. I already had some performance concerns for him. The fact that this back is something he dealt with last year too. I mean, back injuries can linger and can keep recurring. We've seen Clayton Kershaw go through a multi-year stretch with an issue like that. So if there's a health concern there for Sonny Gray and to go along with the up and down career he's had, even the up and down 2020 he had, as short as it was, then I'm reluctant to take him as more than like my number 5 starting pitcher.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. This is your audio outlet for fantasy news and advice in just 5 minutes. If you enjoyed the pod, please leave a 5-star review on Apple. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.